All right, let's talk about something absolutely critical in network security, but something that honestly trips up a lot of people. Firewall rule order. It sounds simple, right? But getting this one thing wrong can be the difference between a lockdown network and, well, a complete disaster. Let's get into it.
So here's the question. To be as secure as possible, doesn't it just make sense to put a giant block all rule right at the very top of your policy? Lock the front door before you decide who to let in. It seems like the ultimate security move, but as you're about to see, this can bring your entire network to a dead stop.
Okay, so what happens when a well-meaning admin actually does this? They go in, create that block everything rule, and stick it right at the top, position number 1. Let's look at the immediate and kind of catastrophic result. And here it is, a total blackout. And I mean total. It's not just blocking the bad guys, it's blocking everyone. Your emails stop, your websites go down, your employees can't work. Why? Because you told the firewall to stop everything that comes its way, and it's just doing its job perfectly. A little too perfectly. To really get why this happened, you have to understand how a firewall thinks. It's not complicated, but it is very, very literal. It all comes down to a core concept called the first match principle. Now, this quote right here is the golden rule. This is everything. See, a firewall isn't a committee. It doesn't weigh its options. It's more like a bouncer at a club with a very strict list. The second it finds a rule that applies to you, it takes action, and the conversation is over. It doesn't keep reading the rest of the list.
And this breaks it down perfectly. A packet of data shows up. The firewall looks at rule number 1. Does this packet match? In our block all scenario, the answer is always yes. So the firewall takes the action, block, and then it stops. It never even gets to rule number 2 or 3 or 4, where you might have your important allow rules. Game over for that packet.
Okay, so if blocking everything first is a huge mistake, what's the right way to do it? Well, the solution is actually to flip the logic completely. Let's walk through the proper blueprint for building a firewall policy that's both secure and, functional.
This right here is the hierarchy that works. You start specific and you get more general as you go down. So at the very top, you put rules to block specific known threats. Think of a list of malicious IP addresses. Then in the middle, you have your allow rules for all the legitimate traffic your business needs. Web, email, all that good stuff. And only then, at the very, very bottom, comes the block all rule. It acts as a final safety net, a cleanup rule that drops anything you haven't explicitly allowed. It's the last word, not the first.
So let's take this theory and see how it works in the real world. We're going to look at semantic endpoint protection as an example, because it has some really smart ways of applying these principles, especially for today's mobile workforce, where people are connecting from everywhere. What makes a tool like semantic endpoint protection so powerful is that its policies aren't just static, it's location-aware. It knows how and from where a user is connecting, and it can actually switch to a completely different set of firewall rules on the fly. And for remote users, that's a game changer. So just think about it for a second. You've got 2 remote employees. One is connected securely through the company VPN. The other is at a coffee shop on that sketchy public Wi-Fi. Should they have the same firewall rules? No way! Their risk levels are totally different, and your security policy needs to reflect that. And one of the biggest differences comes down to stopping something called split tunneling. When a user is on the VPN, you want to force all their traffic through that secure, encrypted tunnel. You can't have them connected to your secure corporate network and the Wild West of the open internet at the same time. And firewall rules are exactly how you enforce that.
Now, this table really brings it all together. Look at the VPN location. The goal is to prevent split tunneling. So notice that the allow rules are scoped to the specific VPN adapter only. Then you combine that with a block all other traffic rule at the end. What does that do? Any traffic that tries to sneak out through another network adapter gets dropped. It's a perfect practical example of using rule order to create tailored security.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about a pro tip. This is a more advanced setting inside Symantec's firewall policy that a lot of people just skip over. But it's really important to understand what it does. It's called reverse DNS lookup.
So what the heck is it? Well, let's say you write a firewall rule that says block traffic to badguywebsite.com. This setting lets the firewall see traffic coming from an IP address, do a quick background check to see what domain name that IP belongs to, and then check if it matches your rule. Simple as that. Without it, your rules based on domain names just won't work.
But, and this is a big but, There's a reason this setting is disabled by default. First, performance. Every one of those lookups takes time, and if your DNS server is slow, your whole network can feel sluggish. And second, security. It's just less secure. The best practice whenever you can is to use specific IP addresses in your rules. They're concrete and much harder to fake than domain names.
Okay, let's wrap this all up. If you walk away with just one thing today, I want it to be the core, fundamental logic of how a good firewall policy is built.
This quote from Symantec's own documentation just says it all, doesn't it? You start with your tightest, most specific rules first, the block this bad IP type of thing. Then you handle your specific allows, and you end with the widest, most general rule, which is your block everything else safety net. Specific to general. That is the key.
So that brings me to my last question for you. When was the last time you actually scrolled through your firewall policy and looked at the order? Is there a block all rule hiding near the top? Is your most critical allow rule stuck way down at the bottom where traffic will never reach it? Because remember, order is everything.
And of course, if you want to make sure your company's first line of defense is built on this solid foundation, get in touch with the experts at Watchpost Security. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.